Hello, everybody. Let me make a quick adjustment here. Gotta remember to hit record. We're hitting record. Okay. Bear with me. Bear with me. Okay. We are recording. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. As you can tell, I am not whispering. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the stream. I won't take up too much more of your time, so we will get to the show. Here we go.
1604, when French explorer Samuel de Champlain, perhaps marveling himself at the land's scenic splendor, crashed his ship into it. Champlain named this...
Lord God Almighty, let your blessing be upon these ships and all who serve on them. May good success and your protection always be with them. In the name of the Father...
Were greeted by welcoming parties of headless skeletons. The missing skulls were found inside the grisly sanctuaries arranged in mysterious patterns. Some 1,300 years before the birth of Christ, Shang kings built their empire on a foundation of human sacrifice.
Critical to Shang religion was the belief that sacrificial offerings had to be made to the deities or the ancestral spirits. This was the source of their wisdom. In order to obtain this wisdom, the Shang were required to present sacrifices to their ancestors.
Energy, but the gain is safety. For the mantis shrimp, it's well worth the effort. Even the smallest animals find safety in building. This tiny amoeba is 1/10 of a millimeter long and constructs a minute case of sand grains around itself, a protective capsule in the depths of inner space.
Course are the first target of a raging bull. Every time the gate opens, their lives are put at risk.
You are violent. Watch here, watch here, watch here.
Portions of dialogue that introduce the songs. I want to ask three special friends of mine to come out now and help me tell about that recording. The land cap. And that's the other thing that we have for sale at a cost of $15 too, right? I just want it all.
all of Canada as well as to us here. It's been a special show.
Yeah, well, look, have a lot of fun during the tall ships. That, I think it was just a cannon, not a gunshot. Don't be alarmed, Peter, but it was pretty neat this morning because earlier some of the tall ships, like way out in the background, would fire their cannon in, and our cannon here on Point Pleasant
This selects just the right type it needs and fits them very precisely. The result is a stone mosaic set in silver.
Please leave your name and address at the sales table in the lobby, and these will be available in the CD and VHS format. Let me introduce you now to our Beth wrote the music, and Bethany Lane together have written the music and the script. I have just a few to
the wire. We have a spill. We have a spill. Drivers and horses down in that stretch. Coming down the stretch, Larry Joe has the lead, then jumping. Eagles in the gap of quarter. Alex checkup. The early trailer is Skipper David. The entertaining first quarter has been completed in 29 Ford. We have a spill.
In 1838, a local lawyer bought the cave outright as a tourist attraction.
Who vied with the Shang for the mandate.
Flames change on the fly.
Slaves served as guides. One of those guides was a remarkable young man named Steve.
And now it's with a great deal of pleasure that we present the Pull of the Land.
But on a line of its own making. A firmly fixed anchorage is essential for this tensile thread, in which the female lays her eggs.
More than receiving a vicious cheap shot, a hockey player's greatest fear
In 1842,
Zhang Guangli was astonished that such lavish pictures would be intentionally destroyed by their creators.
When I drew the statue, I had many thoughts. I was curious there had been such a great statue so many years ago. Also, I felt that it was very mysterious due to its masks and outfits. The more I drew it, the more I felt like I was reading a wordless history book.
These once shattered masterpieces seem to be evidence of a more sober approach to power. While the Shang severed human heads as a show of force and authority, the rulers of San Shengdui conserved their population by decapitating statues.
started seeping into porous rocks and soil to depths of 4,000 feet. Heated in the cauldron of the Earth's innards, these waters began back to the surface with a temperature of 143 degrees Fahrenheit. Early Indians, the first to bathe here, believed that these springs held a great spirit who heated the waters with his breath. The first European to bathe in these springs was Hernando de Soto, the explorer who discovered Florida for Spain. That was back in Thomas Jefferson acquired the springs with the Louisiana Purchase.
Soon these nobles raised armies of their own and a struggle for dynasty began. The final centuries of conflict, from 481 to 221 BC, are called the Warring States period, a time the Chinese weapon was armed with a sophisticated trigger mechanism. The Zhou relied on their swords for close combat. But when all else failed, they resorted to psychological warfare. In 496 BC, a Zhou general, unable to break a long-standing stalemate, sent brigades of criminals to the front. Their choice was simple: die by their own hand or suffer an even worse fate if they refused. As enemy troops held their ground, the grim line of convicts approached. As the soldiers watched in astonishment, the convicts committed suicide.
Dennis Sitar said he expected to see at any moment Errol Flynn jumping off the deck of one of these ships with his sword in his hand, ready to take on anyone who came by.
In hundreds, settlers occupied the area, followed by miners, tree cutters, and hill farmers. Eroded and devastated by generations of use, the land was purchased by the people and the state of Virginia, then presented to the United States government. President Franklin D. Roosevelt dedicated the park in 1936.
And so, my friends, I now take great pleasure in dedicating Shenandoah National Park, of dedicating it to this and to succeeding generations.
Jade pieces were in constant demand and symbolized the power and majesty of the noble ranks.
For the recreation which we find here.
The Civilian Conservation Corps worked to restore the land and build recreational facilities.
We can, as you
1939, the Skyline Drive was completed. The same drive that millions enjoy today. It runs 105 miles down the spine of the Blue Ridge. Off each side.
A real experience today.
I think they are, and you should see.
They developed agriculture on a massive scale to go along with a powerful military force. "250 years before the birth of Christ, a maze of dams, canals, locks, and waterways transformed the heart of central China. The Min River was diverted into the Chengdu Basin, converting an area the size of Connecticut into lush farmland.
Many of them in full sail. Obviously, the vessel in the middle of your picture is not a tall ship. It's one of the new Canadian naval frigates, HMCS Montreal. It will be taking the salute in the parade of sail as the vessels go by. And on board to take that salute is the Governor General. And she joins Clarkson. Good morning, Your Excellency.
Good morning, Peter.
In the last year,
as Colleen was saying, and
when visitors cross the New Mexican border into West Texas, they enter a parched desert. Had they been able to make that trip 250 million years ago, these same waterless flatlands would have looked like this. Before there were animals on this planet, as we know them, or even flowering plants, a salty sea covered thousands of square miles of what is now West Texas.
A 500,000 strong, the Qin army destroyed all rivals in a series of savage campaigns. Under the Qin system, even the lowest commoner could raise his rank and social status based on the number of heads he cut off in battle. In one conflict alone, 450,000 enemy
It's
soldiers
strange,
were captured.
walking on waterless salt flats of what once had been an
All
ocean
were
floor.
beheaded by Qin warriors eager to improve their station in life.
1,085-foot monolith.
Exciting. It'll be a sail of about 6 to 7 or 8 hours, I think. And so it'll be wonderful. You get a real feeling that you're going somewhere. You're not just going out for a little toot. By the way, you know, I have been out on a coastal vessel, one of our Navy's coastal vessels in February, where I actually helped to maneuver it in a high-tech manner. And it didn't crash or anything. And, you know, I was allowed back on a ship by the Navy, so that's great. And so this will be the exact opposite of that going on the Blue Nose.
And I guess the weather will be a little better July compared with February.
The weather is unbelievable. It was good of the CBC to lay that on for this event.
Yeah, boy, if only we had that power, right? Governor General Adrienne Clarkson, we thank you very much for taking a few moments with us, and enjoy the day.
Thank you very much, Peter. It was a pleasure.
Responded with an army of 200,000 convicts and 100,000 troops. Their mission, to build a barrier unique in all the world, the Great Wall of China.
Lived on this planet millions of years ago. If you travel farther south in Texas, you'll be crossing the Chihuahuan Desert, reaching 1,000 miles from the heart of Old Mexico into the southwestern United States. A river, the Rio Grande, loops from the Rockies in Colorado to the Gulf of Mexico, its flow bending through the vast Chihuahuan Desert. In the deep southwest, this is called Big Bend country. Uninhabited? It certainly looks it. But looks can be deceiving. When the Spanish first saw it, they called it Despoblado, the uninhabited land. Today it's called Big Bend National Park, and it is inhabited by over 5,000 species of living things, and by visitors who find the area alive with things to see. The river bends around the Chisos Mountains. Atop these peaks grows forest, holding moisture and giving shade in this place of punishing sun. Desert, yes, but there are also desert grasslands. And there's water. In the flow of the Rio Grande, the river's northern and southern banks are oasis green. This meandering river is the border between two sovereign...
It stretched from the lowest deserts to heights of over 6,000 feet. Sections of new wall connected barriers built by earlier dynasties to create a wonder that spans 2,600 miles. It's even visible to astronauts in space. The Great Wall stood as a warning to outsiders that China was at last a unified kingdom.
In Boston in 1976.
This is a land of seasonal variety.
Entrepreneur who was selling Canadian dimes for 50 cents as both souvenirs of the Queen's visit and souvenirs of the tall ships.
Abolished the nobility and established a...
But she certainly is a beautiful vessel and one that's well known not only around these waters.
For smaller birds unable to lift large weights, the piling up technique of building is rare. A house martin's nest has no support underneath, which raises different engineering problems. They build with mud. Back at the nest, the mud is applied with rapid paddling movements of the beak. This removes air bubbles and welds the new load to the nest. Bits of straw are also picked up with the mud, and not by accident. When straw is added, it stops cracks from developing and the nest from collapsing.
As well, allowing the first emperor's edicts to
blistered shapes
of his realm.
The first
are saturated with color.
rigged ship, it's the Mir. Now the sails are not down at the moment.
Began to criticize many of Chin's new ideas as a dangerous break with the past.
Using saliva, which emerges from the mouth as a glutinous thread.
We saw some terrible harness races. Is slandered, and before her race, she broke loose and headed for the main gate. Amazingly, she climbed the stairs leading up to the driver's waiting room. What was most frightening was that as Slandered walked...
pendulum tit lashes its nest foundation to a forked twig. The material is a yarn.
Old Chimney Rock. These white sandstone cupolas recall the domes of Capitol buildings. And these jagged ridges called reefs, barriers to passage.
Action 2 is that her skipper for many years was Captain Robert Bartlett, Brigus, Newfoundland, and of course Bartlett went to the north with
BC,
Perry. And,
a new dynasty called the Han rose to power. At its height in the 1st century BC, the Han dynasty was equaled in might only by the Roman Empire. But its 5th emperor, Wu Di, knew that even the Great Wall would not protect his kingdom forever. Nomadic raiders in the north remained an ever-present threat.
He was registered at the
outcrop of frontier Christianity. And if anyone could turn this shale into a garden, it was a Mormon. There was good reason for hiding here. It was the 1880s, and federal authorities were flushing out Mormons who practiced plural marriage, which had been sanctioned by their church. It would be hard for the federal marshals to find them here. It was too tough. In flexing their collective muscle, these Mormons turned the valley of their bleak hideaway.
Multidisciplinary, hands-on education programs tailored to meet the specific needs of schools and colleges, other educational and cultural organizations. Program offerings range from dockside visits for any age, day sales for 6th.
10 years later, an old man appeared in Wu Di's court.
A number of young people who've been out.
Zhang Qian, the faithful diplomat, had survived. The courageous servant recounted his 10-year odyssey, including a startling discovery he'd made in his travels. Zhang Qian had escaped his captors and fled as far west as Afghanistan. There, to his amazement, he found Chinese goods on sale in every marketplace. Traders were moving Chinese products to the edge of the known world, the most precious commodity, a cloth called silk. Wu Di listened in disbelief.
From hunter-gatherers to farmers, working with simple tools, they coaxed squash, beans, and corn from the desert soil. At first, they dwelled in pit homes, then pueblos resembling those still used by the Hopi Indians of Arizona. It wasn't until the end of their tenure on the mesa that they constructed these fantastical structures. Cliff Palace, with over 200 rooms. And since its discovery, this cliff city has left archaeologists with one lingering question. Why? Why did they leave their pueblos for the cliff dwellings? And where did they go? Were they driven away by drought? By wars? Stored food and pottery hint that they had planned to return.
Circumnavigated the globe in 19...
Rulers were revealed in the city of Changsha in southeast China.
Officers and 4,500 enlisted women and men from the Colombian Navy.
Gloria was actually the last ship to arrive in Halifax. She was anchored off Halifax on Friday, came in sometime Friday night, Saturday morning, and so they haven't had a lot of time in port, and now they're heading off again. Time in port is very important for a lot of these vessels because it gives them an opportunity to do work on the ship, and it's very difficult at events like this because most of them take on visitors, so the amount of time they have to actually get the chores done that you need to do in order to set out in a couple of days is very limited. Most of the vessels have been open from 12 to 5 on a daily basis. I was on the Kaiwo Maru the other day, and as soon as 5 to 5 came, they immediately hauled in the gangway and or the exit gangway. So they really look forward to having time in port to do all the necessary work that's required to safely sail these vessels. The other ironic thing about them is that a lot of the crew of these vessels, the professional crew, are the type of people who love to go to sea, and what they like about going to sea is that they're away from crowds. And I sort of wonder how a lot of them felt or feel when they, over the last month or so, or month and a half, they've been in New York, Boston, and Halifax, and I suspect a lot of them are looking forward to the next 4 weeks when they can not have to worry about 120,000 people walking by their vessel every morning.
Well, another Canadian.
Now the songs of the voyageurs, bridging the border between Canada and the United States, bridging centuries. Calico shirts, their red knitted toques set rakishly over the dare-me twinkling of their eyes, and their voices raised in lusty song. These are the voyageurs. They came singing, their canoes loaded with cloth, blankets. Yet these crews of 6 to 10 men cheerfully paddle from 14 to 16 hours a day. Each hour, they'd take time for a pipe.
Masted schooners, fore and aft rig, but these were good.
Supply and demand. The goods they hauled to the Indian trappers were exchanged.
Woven in silk is a haggard likeness of Lady Scene herself, the portrait of an old and sickly woman supported by a cane. Researchers now know that the imperial lifestyle of the Han nobility, while opulent, was far from healthy. Remains found in the tombs reveal a fatty diet rich in meats and seafoods. The tomb's most precious relic offered the clearest picture yet of Chinese life at the top. Lady Scene herself.
Hello, everybody. Just checking in on you. How are you doing? We're whispering again. We're back to whispering. I hope that's okay. Well, quite the stream we got going on here, I must say. Playing with the chroma key, the green screen. How do you like that, eh? Real nice, real nice. Anyways, thank you for watching. Again, we have 3 people watching, myself included, so that means we have 2 people watching live. Welcome to the greatest show on earth.
Not only spiders are able to...
The autopsy of Lady Scene looked at her heart, intestines, reproductive system, and urinary system. It indicated that she had heart disease and died of a heart attack sometime in her 50s.
Life isn't everything I hoped for. I'm not sure if it's where I want to spend the rest of my
The
life.
treasures of Changsha reveal the wealth of the Han nobility, but the fortunes of a
Legs
prime
and jaws
minister were
straining
pocket
to hold the edges in position. The adult ants don't secrete silk. Only the larvae do that. So the adults pick up the white grubs and, using them like a tube of glue,
Shipwrecks ring the park. Ships with regal names like the Monarch, the Emperor. Ships proudly patriotic like the America. This ship's graveyard is
silk is used in many ways, even caterpillars.
For the next historic and scenic national parks,
Develops the
we
chrysalis
travel
of
to
a
the
moth.
Dakotas.
This is a cocoon built by a caterpillar, the material all of its own making. Hairs plucked from its body have been carefully arranged and stuck together. No one has yet seen this being done. It's probably designed to protect the chrysalis from marauding ants, as is this strange shell-like cage built over a plant-sucking bug. The material secreted from the back end of this animal is a wax of some kind. Plant-sucking bugs excrete masses of honeydew, but some bugs, rather than wasting the sugar, convert it into wax. This architect makes the wax into an impregnable prison cell within which it can feed unmolested.
To see cattle grazing in pastures green.
These are the of the
A strange blowhole. The wind blew off one of their hats. This incident led to the discovery of one of the world's oldest caves. The hidden limestone cave was soon opened to tourism. Today, it anchors a national park. Caverns. We nicknamed them with a familiar frostwork, popcorn formations. Beyond the 1.5 miles of public trails, cavers are exploring, still pushing out into the unknown. Long before Jesse Bingham had his hat blown off at the blowhole, the Sioux knew of this cave. They believed that the Great Spirit sent the buffalo from this cave to their Sioux hunting grounds. Wind ripples the grass.
I came here as soon as the terracotta warriors were discovered by some peasants who were digging a well. The more we excavated, the more things came out. Over 6,000 terracotta horses and soldiers were discovered in pit number 1. Many of us got together and started drinking.
canvas, lots of sails to be adjusted, and you can see here some of the crew up on the foot ropes along the yard. Looks like they might be getting ready to unfurl their topsail.
Now, what's the safety situation when you're hanging around up there on that the yard arm that high?
Well, they all have safety belts, and you know, when
for several years.
To the other, you're hooked on. So certainly a lot different than it was in the 19th century. The safety in the 19th century was one hand for the ship and one for yourself, usually in that order.
The replica warriors of Xi'an reveal the look of Qin's troops in battle. The statues were buried in combat formation, giving...
Soon learned to master the animal. Their braves became skilled and daring riders. Now they hunted buffalo on
is a wreck.
Everything they needed: food, hides for robes, clothes, drumheads, covering for their teepees.
The main body is made of a 38-column formation. There is a guarding column on either side, and a row of guards facing to the back in the rear. Its organization is like a huge rock. When the Qing attack, enemies are broken into pieces.
For the tongues, which were considered a table delicacy. And then it seems to wipe out the buffalo as a food source, so as to starve the Indians into submission. Teddy Roosevelt once commented sadly, "Never before were so many large, wild animals of one species slain in so short a space of time." Of many a ritual ghost dance, once powerful tribes, still proud, people turned to religious medicine, a revival of chants and dances that they believed would magically bring back the buffalo. But whites were wary of it. They called it the ghost dance cult, and it made them uneasy. 3 days after Christmas of 1890, at a creek called Wounded Knee, there was a scuffle between some trigger-happy troopers of the 7th U.S. Cavalry that enriched the world. The troopers ran amok, raking the poorly armed Indians with Gatling guns from the hilltops. It's estimated that 200, some say 300 Indians died. Many were children. The event is often referred to as the Battle of Wounded Knee. It wasn't a battle at all. It was a massacre. In a way, the buffalo have returned to the Badlands, due more to movements begun by people like Theodore
would have
Roosevelt.
been impossible.
Bentley and Fleming that built the spars for Blue Nose, 1921, tugboat wharves. Well, the big difference with the waterfront now is that the public have access to the waterfront. You could have never done something like this, even in the 1960s or early 70s, because this area was filled with wharves. They were private commercial wharves, and their owners didn't take kindly to people coming and sitting on their wharves and docking at vessels going.
He sought solace on what was then a ranch, the Maltese Cross Ranch he'd invested in the previous year. He had retired from public life. Now he would throw himself into the vigorous job of cattle ranching. From a family line of early Dutch settlers in New York, T.R. had a pampered upbringing. He had been sickly, weak, and nearsighted, but he was full of pluck. To overcome his puniness, he threw himself into what he extolled as the strenuous life. He built muscle. He became a hunter, an explorer, and a forceful advocate of the out-of-doors. Now, with his squeaky voice and Eastern manners, he became a frontier rancher. His ranch hands may have laughed at him at first. To them, he was the four-eyed dude. Theodore Roosevelt soon won their respect. Stories began circulating about how he won a fight with his bare fists against a drunken gunman, and how he captured 3 desperados whom he turned over to the law. Theodore Roosevelt fell in love with this land. It healed his aching spirit. It became a source of his tremendous energy. When he returned to public life to become the 26th President of the United States, the inspiration that he drew from this frontier became the breath of every national park in the United States. And perhaps it was out of his passion for the preservation of the wilderness that he charted a course for a nation's future. To almost everyone in the world, the name California rings of the Golden West. It hosts a national parks, 2 parks added.
Eventually, very large combs.
California's desert regions. Joshua
and has
the right stuff to build bigger structures housing even larger social groups of wasps. Hidden in your own garden or attic, such a stalk may be supporting a stack of combs, hanging one below the other in the nest of the familiar garden wasp.
Wilderness. This native plant symbolized their Joshua, their biblical hero. And so they christened it the Joshua Tree.
Strengthened by the woody fibers
here in Joshua Tree National Park
and other pieces of unrotted wood. There is no great threat from ants here, but the huge brood must be protected from the cool summers. So the combs are wrapped in layers.
Pastures for the high ground ranching.
Of Western civilization. Here, isolated in the east.
So paper. Trails are covered. They become
emperors were heir to a much older tradition.
And now in Halifax, the 180-foot-long 3-masted British bark is a huge hit wherever she goes. Her irresistible appeal, she's accessible. The ship was built to encourage integration between able-bodied and physically disabled people. It offers them the opportunity to experience tall ship sailing together. On board, a crew of 50, 10 permanent professional crew members, 40 voyage crew, of which half are able-bodied, half are disabled. The crew includes people the visually and hearing impaired, people recovering from heart surgery, and much more. Kathy Young is a Newfoundlander who's been living in Nova Scotia for the past 7 years. She was born
person works alongside a disabled person and you do as much as you can. And if you can't do it, somebody pitches in and helps behind you. So everybody does as much as they can. It's a ship to work to your ability, but you're expected to work to your ability.
And that's clearly where the emphasis lies, on ability, not disability. And to serve that purpose, there's special equipment. There are wide decks to accommodate wheelchairs. There are braille markings and power steering. And a talking
wagons were left behind.
Those who can't see. The bowsprit is extra.
Life began to emerge. 4,000 years ago, royal priests...
Two able-bodied men set off over the towering Panamint Mountains.
Everybody gets to go up to the crow's nest and take a look, and everybody's given the same opportunity. Everybody is equal, and I think that's the major thing. Everybody's equal on the ship. Yesterday morning, I got to hoist the Canadian flag, because being the Canadian on watch, when the guy said, you know...
Looked back and rasped, Goodbye, Death Valley. Long before others were saying, hello, Death Valley. And when borax, a mineral used in glass and ceramics, was discovered, the wagons really began to roll. 30-ton wagon trains hauled by 20 mule teams, actually 18 mules and a pair of horses. For 5 years, these massive outfits rumbled 165 miles to the nearest railhead and rest. Every year, the month of July averages 100...
A lifetime, one she'll never forget.
Humbling.
88 at night. 351
wonderful,
days a year.
awesome.
Sun broken up by barely enough rain to fill a shot glass. The little that does fall seeps down and down and down to bad water, 282 feet below sea level. This baked, blistering region seems to slow the march of time. Flowers may bloom only once every 10 years. Boulders.
Well, send 2 men to do a boy's...
Thrill it is to plumb the depths of Death Valley and come out alive.
Okay, Pete, what's up? Are you having trouble with the swather?
The Shang employed sophisticated technology to perfect this most sacred of their crafts. While Mediterranean artisans were only beginning to experiment with metals, the Chinese had already elevated bronze casting to an art.
Well, the next vessel we're going to focus on is carries a name that is certainly historic.
From clay molds packed in earth would come richly detailed
This
works
is a
of art.
German brigantine named after, of course, the Norwegian polar explorer who was the first to cross the Northwest Passage. He was also the first person to reach the South Pole.
Shang bronzes were covered with symbols of haunting terror, but these powerful rulers were also capable of intimacy.
Name and a very...
The Yahi, a tribe native to these parts, was massacred by white settlers in 1871. Few survived. One took refuge in the shadows of this peak.
And political were credited to his favorite wife, Fu Hao.
Stone Age survivor in the United States. Spanish explorers named it San Jose. Gold seekers knew it as Mount Joseph. Mapmakers
often sold in the United Kingdom and turned out to be very often these brigs from Nova Scotia would go to England, and the captain would be given instructions by the owner to sell the cargo, but if you could sell the ship as well, sell it. And the money was then rolled back into building other vessels back here on this side of the ocean.
At 9:43 a.m. local time,
Well,
Benjamin
from the
Franklin
Raoul
Lewis
Amundsen,
readied his camera as the
really catch a
northwest
glimpse
side
of
of
this
the
next
mountain.
one. It's from
The Lassen volcano was
various
crumbling, then exploding.
And mourned her passing until his death.
Reason. In the heat of competition, it's not uncommon to see tempers rise. In this game between college rivals, Georgetown University and the University of Pittsburgh, tempers reach the boiling point.
shoulders, my I can actually breathe deeper.
But the actual salute as they go by HMCS Montreal.
The rig height is actually over 50 meters, which is really quite high.
Yes. Must be quite the sight from up there. Well, it's certainly quite the sight from down here as these vessels go by. It still
was said to have invented hideous tortures. Hot coals were poured into a hollow cylinder and victims seared to death. Fact or fiction may never be known.
You can see all these sailors are standing on the foot ropes.
It is known that D.C. was not alone in his quest for Dynasties.
Going through their salute routine to the crowd and to those on board.
At a site called Sangshengdui, the culture was discovered. A people who vied with the Shang for the
Might be able to see her figurehead. It's a lovely figurehead. The Hanzhou means deep blue sea. Built in Japan. First time she's been in this part of the world. Has probably come the longest distance of any of the vessels that are here today.
That's pretty impressive. This not only the sight of it, but the way the crew is performing for the crowds here and for those on board HMCS Montreal.
Sequoia, an old-timer dating back to 1890, and Kings Canyon, a youngster inducted into the park system in 1940. They're back-to-back, these two parks, guarding a precious wilderness. The 500,000 acres of Kings Canyon Park plunge into the V of one of the deepest canyons in the United States, deeper than the Grand Canyon. Here, the cool, clean air is like wine, making for a heady, high-country exhilaration. There is a dizzying array of waterfalls, freshets, rapids, and the scudding clouds overhead seem just a jump above you. The eastern expanse unfolds in the ups and downs of a varied wilderness. From the Sierra Nevada's over 14,000-foot-high eastern wall to grassy meadows and wandering streams. Not all of the pleasures of these parks are breathtaking spectacles. There are the pleasures of the Sierra's life in little.
But kings rich enough to commission such extravagant bronzes were also capable of mustering formidable armies.
There's clambering up there, and even with a safety harness, it can still be a very dangerous, thing to do. But it certainly, as we mentioned before, a lot more safety devices on ships nowadays than you had.
1,000 years before the birth of Christ, 300 years before the founding of Rome, Zhou culture flourished. They established their empire from a capital near the present-day city of Xi'an.
The life of the most massive living thing on Earth is programmed in a seed as light and as fragile as an oatmeal flake. 200 of these seeds are cooped in a cone the size of a hen's egg. Fires, and for millions of years lightning-caused fires, have been a natural burn-off in these forests. Prepare the soil for the seeds. Very thick bark, pretty well protects the trees from flame damage. To grow naturally, sequoias need the right conditions: soil, moisture, climate. In the whole world, there are only 76 groves in which these trees grow natively, all of them on the western slopes of the Sierra Nevada. 30 of these groves are in Kings Canyon and Sequoia National Parks. The granddaddy of all sequoias is named after General Sherman, the Civil War general who is famous, or infamous, for his march through Georgia. General Sherman is 270 feet high and still growing. It's the most massive living thing in the world. From the 14th century into the 1880s, Indians had lived here. They left picture stories on the rocks. And mortar holes used in pounding acorn into meal, the staple of their diet.
No problem. You get in. You deserve a break today. All right. How much do you pay? How much are you paying me, by the way? Is it? Anyhow, this has been the with the streets closed off, Peter. Don't you want to put your backwards?
As skipper of a two-caravel fleet, he was seeking that fabled trade route between Europe and Asia, the Northwest Passage. And like all others before him, he never found it. What he did discover was the service of Spain. In 1542, he anchored on what was later named San Miguel, one of the 8 islands in the Santa Barbara Channel.
Nothing is a sure bet.
Principles. Animals rely on thousands of years of evolutionary invention and selection. Surprisingly, this approach is so successful that virtually the entire spectrum of building skills which man, the engineer, has devised for himself.
For the junkies involved with these pacers, they are gambling too, that accidents like these never happen to them.
Second, up, stride, and down, and we have a bad...
Some of the wheats run, but it's a model design.
Like Cabrillo, most of today's explorers of the Channel Islands, which were established as a national park in 1980, arrived. Visitors come to learn, to satisfy curiosity. They come for adventure. These islands are pure California. California as it must have looked 500 years ago. The park, which is an international biosphere reserve, takes in the northern 5 islands of the 8 Channel Islands and 1 mile of ocean around each island. Which means Holy Cross.
There's the horse vessel.
Almost as large as Santa Cruz is neighboring Santa Rosa. This lonely island, often fog-draped.
We pull chairs are up to
Same kind of problems as human architects and engineers. Over the eons, they've selected new materials and new structures. They must build to survive.
No longer. Today, this is sanctuary.
They developed agriculture on a massive scale to go along with a powerful military force.
Erie Harbor. In 1913,
Ease of dams, canals, locks, and waterways.
A medium that was kind to the first life, supporting their weight, cushioning them from the hostile air above.
The Chengdu Basin, converting an area the size of Connecticut into lush farmland.
First home, soft-bodied creatures like the sea cucumber had little to fear from the climate, but the water
they won't let the issue die. Paul Stanton takes a shot.
More than receiving a vicious cheap shot, a hockey player's greatest fear is being on the losing end of a fight.
From its enemies by digging into the sand. But there's another way to hide, and that is to rearrange the environment in a
BC. Qin ministers convinced a young prince that China's competing states were now hit.
California, where they breed. It's a 6,000-mile trip. Starting at the end of December, the gray whales make a stop en route at the Channel Islands. Here,
the world about them costs time and energy, but the gain is safety.
it's a land of mind-boggling extremes. The Alaskan wilderness.
Structs a minute
bounty. Remember the moon
around itself, a protective capsule in the depths of inner space.
And the makers of a motion picture came back to have.
In the south, the wilderness preserve of Kenai Fjords and volcanic Katmai National Park.
Prove their station in life. In the end,
and cement them into a protective case.
Like this, where the players go beyond the rules of the game, is a...
Just young Daniels in this city, gal.
can be dangerous.
Far to the north of present-day Mongolia, nomadic warriors raided
Different than Dunkirk and Normandy.
Very much so. She's was designed.
The first emperor responded
simply arranged to make a neat structure. The tiny rotifer can lie inside the tube, exposing only its two wheel-like filters.
One of the world's last great wild places.
Local materials found quickly and easily on the stream bed.
Okay, everybody. That concludes our session for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Just gonna get the shot here. Alright, I hope you enjoyed it. It was very fun. We had a good time. It was a nice mix of different video. I want to give a shout out to all the people that were watching live. You know who you are. And looks like my recording actually stopped because I ran out of hard drive space. Hey, that happens sometimes. Hey, it happens. Hey. So, yeah, just wanted to let you all know that we should be back tomorrow. And, we got some exciting stuff coming your way. So, yeah. There it is. Hope you can see what I'm doing here. We got lots of cool shit going on here. Alright. I'm gonna let you guys go. Again, thanks for watching. And until next time, you know, keep fit. Have fun. We're gonna end on purple. You know we're gonna end on purple. ending on purple. Have a good night, everybody. Thanks for watching again.